Welcome to JK Tells a Story, where real-life dramas unfold. Sit back and enjoy today's tale. I grew up in what was eventually called a broken home. As a child, I thought my parents' marriage was strong. They seemed to love and respect each other. My father worked construction in Dallas, a physically demanding job that required everything from him. But he loved his wife and family and sacrificed himself for what could be called the greater good. My mother returned to work at Methodist Dallas Medical Center when my younger sister started school. As a child, I didn't really understand what was going on, but looking back, there were signs that I eventually recognized. My mother didn't start cheating right away. It began when I was a teenager. My brother, a year and a half younger than me, and my little sister, 3 years younger, were unaware of what was happening. The betrayal began with late returns from work, then business trips, and an increased emphasis on personal grooming when she came home. Since this was in the early 2000s, before smartphones were everywhere, there were secret phone calls and unexpected disappearances. The only reason my father discovered the affair was because it caught them by surprise. I later learned that my father had finished work early, hoping to surprise my mother with an afternoon date when she announced she would take half a day off to go to the hairdresser and do some shopping. He came home to find her car in the driveway and a car he recognized nearby. He parked at the end of our Plano Street, walked home, and entered through the back door. He found my mother with her supervisor, Robert Fletcher, in a compromising situation in their bedroom. My father was completely enraged. There was a confrontation that left Fletcher bruised and fleeing our house. Despite his anger, my father had always taught us never to lay a hand on a woman, and how he controlled himself that day, he still can't explain. What he quickly learned was that infidelity meant nothing in a state where no-fault divorces were the norm. Some argue that possession is 9/10 of the law, but my father couldn't evict my mother even though she was unfaithful. She had every right to stay in the house. My father tried to remove her, but since the house was in both their names and her family wanted nothing to do with her, he was stuck. If he stayed, divorce was not possible. In Texas, a husband and wife must live separately for 60 days before a divorce can be obtained, though the entire process typically takes several months. My father eventually gave in, not wanting to stay in the same house as his cheating wife. He found an apartment in Richardson, but it wasn't big enough for all three of us, so we were left living with my mother. I realized what was happening and let my mother know my feelings. She tried to explain her reasons, but I told her I would go live with my father as soon as I could. My younger brother and sister weren't informed and simply wondered why our father left. I tried to explain without getting too involved. The only good thing my mom did that year was that she never stopped us from seeing my dad. He was a broken man those first couple of months. He tried his best to put on a happy face for his children, but even we could see that the smile was forced. Being the oldest, he sat me down one night after my siblings had gone to bed and admitted that we were the only reason he stuck around. He said he would fight for custody and try to get a bigger place if possible, although it seemed like a pipe dream at the time. Men were rarely granted primary custody back then. After the required separation period, they were required to appear in court to sort out custody and other issues. Since I was old enough to speak in court, I categorically stated that I wanted to live with my father. However, my brother and sister were considered too young to make such a decision, although the judge would take their wishes into account. Custody of all three of us was given to my mother. The only positive thing for my father was that in Texas, child support is calculated based on income and number of children using standardized guidelines. Since our mother was already earning well as a hospital administrator, he only had to pay reasonable support. Texas child support laws are relatively fair for the non-custodial parent, so my father would not be left financially ruined by support payments. The next 4 years were difficult. I already despised my mother, and she knew it. Every man she tried to introduce as her new partner was told by me that my mother was an unfaithful woman who had cheated on her husband, forcing him to leave the family home. More than once, I left her in tears. By the time I was 16, we barely spoke, and I left the house as often as possible. whether it was for school, working part-time at a local Walmart, or just being away. My father got his life back on track after his divorce and eventually met a wonderful woman named Linda Foster, who was also divorced. I supported their relationship, and she soon came to love his 3 children as if they were her own. She had her own daughter from her previous marriage, and we treated her like a sister. Despite the heartache, I was glad that my father had found love again, even though I knew he was hesitant to marry again. Linda seemed to understand this, so she was happy to move in together. They eventually rented a larger house in Garland and formed their own blended family. As soon as I turned 18 and graduated from Plano East Senior High School, I moved in with my father. I hated leaving my siblings behind, which was the only reason I stayed until that age. By then, my relationship with my mother had become unbearable. My last words to her were, I admit, incredibly cruel, but it was just an explosion of all the negative thoughts I had been holding inside. Despite our broken relationship, she still cried when I packed my things on the day I left. I hugged my brother and sister, assuring them that I would be there for them and wouldn't forget about them, before glaring at my mother one last time. My experience with my mother made me cautious in my relationships with women. I had read many articles about infidelity and knew that monogamy was important to me. I expected the same from any partner. I had a few girlfriends while I was in school, but when I started working and earning money, I began dating in hopes of finding a woman worthy of my love and trust. I met Rebecca when I was 22. She had recently graduated from the University of Texas at Dallas with a degree in healthcare administration. I was working as a construction project coordinator for a commercial construction company that specialized in medical facilities and taking evening courses at Dallas County Community College because, although I enjoyed working with my hands, I hoped to advance into project management. I met her at a corporate healthcare conference at the Dallas Convention Center where I was representing our construction company working on hospital renovations, and she was working part-time as a representative for a medical equipment vendor. We hit it off immediately, and by the end of the day, I had her number in my phone with a promise to call her soon. Hot date, man? My roommate Tyler asked when I got home. Tyler Brooks was one of my best classmates from community college, and we had agreed to live together in a 2-bedroom apartment in Mesquite to save on rent and bills. Something like that, I replied, grinning. Daniel, is this the girl you met at the conference? Yeah, I finally got the courage to call her, I said. I just waited a couple of days so as not to seem too eager. Trust me, she was excited on the phone when I called and really wanted to meet as soon as possible. After a bit of cologne, I thought I looked decent. Even though I had a decent job, the money wasn't much, but I was quite comfortable. We agreed to meet at a downtown Dallas bar near Deep Ellum and go from there. I usually didn't have dinner or drinks on the first couple of dates. There are too many stories of women looking for free food with the man paying and never hearing from the woman again. Walking into the bar after parking on the street, I saw her sitting on a stool. She was already there with her drink, looking around the room. When her eyes met mine and she smiled, I think my heart started beating a little faster. She had gorgeous shoulder-length blonde hair, brown eyes that sparkled in the dim lighting, and a lovely smile. She was quite slender with a graceful figure. As we chatted over a couple of drinks, we gradually got to know each other. Her role at the corporate event was temporary, as she admitted she was hired mainly for her appearance to attract attendees to the booth. I laughed about it at first, but it made me feel like a piece of meat, she said. I had so many married men hit on me, and it was disgusting. I understood her point. I knew my own mother had cheated, and both parties in affairs were equally wrong about cheating. Out of curiosity, I had looked up statistics online, and the fact that so many men and women admitted to extramarital affairs literally dropped my jaw in shock. What made it worse was that, according to many articles, America has some of the highest infidelity rates in the developed world. But you were a perfect gentleman, Daniel, she added, taking my hand in hers. You didn't try to check me out inappropriately or make crude comments. You looked me in the eyes the entire time and remained completely professional, at least until you asked for my number. You were the only real person there. I hope you're free, I said, putting my hand over my heart and raising my other hand. I swear I'm single. Ask any of my friends. She smiled and squeezed my hand again. Good, because I have a good feeling about you. I've been fooled before, though. We agreed not to rush things. For the first few weeks, we met for coffee or drinks at various places around Dallas. Sometimes in Deep Ellum, sometimes near SMU. It was at the end of the third evening when we kissed for the first time. By then, she knew about my parents' marriage. She hugged me tightly, and for some reason, it made me feel better. When we kissed, I just knew it was right. Meeting her gaze, I had the feeling she was thinking the same thing. Drinks turned into dinner, and a week later, she was already spending time at the apartment I shared with Tyler. He had his own girlfriend and spent most of his time with her, so he was often away. A month later, she confessed her love to me. I responded in kind, and our relationship developed rapidly. Once she found a permanent job at Presbyterian Hospital Dallas as an administrative coordinator in the outpatient services department. We began discussing serious issues such as moving in together, buying a house, marriage, and children. By that point, even though what happened to my father was still on my mind, Rebecca had completely won my heart, and that was all that mattered. She was a joy to be around, and she admitted she wanted more than anything to be a wife and mother. Before we got married, we decided to buy a house together. Luckily, this was in 2008, just before the housing market really crashed in Texas. However, due to her limited work history at the time and some credit issues from college, which she told me about, she could not co-finance the mortgage. I couldn't get a mortgage on my own with my salary, so my father offered to co-sign with me, his income supplementing mine. I didn't realize how much this would benefit me in the future, but at that moment, Rebecca was very grateful to him and almost cried when he told her she was now just another daughter to him. Her parents, who lived in Frisco, absolutely adored me. So when I proposed just 3 months after moving into our new home in Allen, everyone was thrilled when we announced our engagement and wedding date. Marrying Rebecca was the happiest day of my life up to that point. I married a woman I considered my soulmate, and she often told me that I was her soulmate in return. Walking toward the altar, I was probably smiling like a fool. She started giggling as I took her hand, and we were both overjoyed to finally commit ourselves to each other. It wasn't a church wedding. It took place in a beautiful park in North Dallas with a pavilion nearby where the reception was held. Our honeymoon lasted a week in Cancun. Sun, sea, sand, and pure bliss. Not surprisingly, we realized she was pregnant soon after. 9 months after our honeymoon, she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. 6 months after giving birth, she was ready for her next baby. 18 months later, she gave birth to our son. After 3 months, we agreed that 2 children were enough. We both had what we wanted. To my surprise, she didn't want me to get a vasectomy, just in case we changed our minds. She simply agreed to go back on birth control, as it never bothered her, and life continued as normal. She was a homemaker and mother until both of our children went to school. Once our son started kindergarten, she resumed work at the hospital, although she only worked during school hours. Once both of our children were in high school, she returned to full-time employment, eventually becoming the operations manager for Presbyterian's outpatient services. By the time we were both 43, I had become a regional project manager for Turner Construction, one of the largest construction companies in the country. I managed commercial and healthcare construction projects across the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. I traveled occasionally to project sites in Austin and Houston, but rarely left home for more than one night. She had established herself in her administrative career, eventually becoming the operations manager for the hospital's outpatient services, although she sometimes had to report to the main administrative offices downtown or attend meetings at Presbyterian's other campuses. Our daughter Emma left home to live with her boyfriend, a sweet young man who was already devoted to her. I assumed wedding bells were looming on the horizon. Our son Michael was still at the University of Texas at Dallas. living in a student apartment close to campus in Richardson. I was aware of his varied interests in relationships, but Rebecca and I supported him regardless of his life choices. We had been married for over 20 years at that time. I thought we still loved each other just as much as the day we exchanged vows. Hand on heart, I could look at another woman but never considered doing anything, since I had given my heart to Rebecca and didn't want to break that trust. But I couldn't avoid what happened to my father. It had always stayed with me. I should have known better. I should have seen the signs. When I finally realized the truth, I knew I would have to take certain steps to prepare for the inevitable. You just never think it will happen to you, do you? Do you think she's cheating on you? Tyler asked, hearing the surprise in his voice when I confided in him during one of our rare get-togethers at a sports bar in Deep Ellum. Dude, she loves you to death. What the hell is going on? I was blind, Tyler. I thought that when Michael left home, our relationship would go back to what it was before. For months, she really couldn't get enough of me, to be honest. I paused, feeling uncomfortable discussing intimate details. But I began to notice similar behavior to what my mother exhibited toward my father. Just thinking about that still makes my blood boil. I hadn't seen my mother much in the last 20 years. She attended my wedding, and it was only because my father intervened. By then, he had already married Linda and had really moved on. He told me to be the bigger person and invite her. I didn't need to involve her, but not inviting her would have made me the bad guy. I gritted my teeth and sent the invitation. Besides, with the exception of news about her grandchildren, whom she rarely had the opportunity to visit, I had nothing more to do with her. What are you gonna do? I'll gather all the evidence I can, and if she's cheating on me, I'll just leave her. How will you do it? I have my ways. She's become more secretive over the past few months. I should have noticed it sooner, my own stupid mistake. But that's what I get for trusting. Once I realized what was happening, it was probably too late to do anything. So I was preparing for the inevitable. I have an appointment with a private investigator on Monday morning. All I need to know is if she is cheating on me. I don't need pictures or videos, just anything that will help my case. It's a pity that in this state you can't get divorced because of infidelity, but a man can protect himself if he's smart and takes precautions in advance. Luckily, she waited until the kids were grown up before cheating. There are one or two things she forgot about that might turn things in my favor. He patted me on the shoulder. I'm sorry, buddy. I really am. I'm sorry too. The thing is, until I get confirmation, I can't stop loving her. Maybe it's just my suspicions. Maybe I'm just a jealous jerk. But the signs are there, buddy. I was blind until I finally realized what was happening. The next morning, I went to my father's house in Garland. Linda greeted me as usual, asking if she could sit with us while I explained the situation. I had a look on my face that prompted him to put a bottle of Shiner Bock in front of me, even though it was only 10 a.m., telling me to take my time and start when I was ready. I smiled as he took Linda's hand. They still loved each other as much as they did on their wedding day. The live-in relationship hadn't lasted long before my father wanted her to be his wife. I think Rebecca is cheating on me, I said. Linda gasped. My father muttered, "Damn, not again. I'll hire a private investigator on Monday, but all the signs are there, Dad. The same signs you told me about with Mom. If she's cheating, then she's definitely read the playbook on how to hide it." But once I pulled my head out of the sand, I paused. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. Dad looked at me with that knowing expression. "What's your plan, son?" "Dad, I'm gonna give you my house. Remember how you co-signed on the mortgage agreement many years ago? Rebecca never put her name on the property deed. By law, you and I own this property, and when I leave, she'll be considered nothing more than a tenant. I am giving you the house as a gift simply by removing my name from the documents. According to Texas state and federal laws, I can do this for free. What do we do then? I'll sign a lease with you month by month. Once I end our marriage, if that happens, you can deal with Rebecca. Although she'll have some tenant rights due to living in the property for a long time, we'll explore how you can legally evict her with a court order if necessary. Unfortunately, due to the plan I have in mind, I won't be present. Have you thought this through, Daniel? Linda asked with concern. Rebecca and I discussed monogamy and fidelity before our wedding. She knows about my mother. I warned her that if she ever cheated on me, I would not forgive her. I don't care if it happens once or 100 times. If you're involved with someone else, you're breaking the vows we made and thus the marriage contract. Although a no-fault divorce means I can leave easily, I won't have to pay her a dime in alimony since the children are adults and there is no spousal support required. She earns about the same amount of money as I do. Thank God Texas doesn't have those crazy alimony laws like in some other states. It's maddening to think that a cheater might get a part of my salary just because she can't keep her commitments. I took a sip of my beer and looked at Linda. Sorry I got a little heated about that. I just hope I'm wrong. Back home in Allen, Rebecca was in the living room, curled up on the couch watching a movie. She smiled at me as always, her eyes lit up when I appeared. "Where have you been?" she asked. "Just needed some advice from my dad about work. Perhaps a new opportunity will arise." The problem was that I only had suspicions, no concrete evidence that she was cheating on me. If she did have a connection with someone, it was someone she didn't see every day. I knew that spontaneous girls' nights out would be one of the final red flags, but that hadn't happened yet. There were only occasional late returns from work, but I also had those when projects required late-night coordination calls. If she had any suspicion, she might have thought I was cheating on her on those rare evenings when I was late from work. When she got into bed that night, she snuggled up to me like she always did, whispering how much she loved me. It hurt my heart to think that she was lying to me. Perhaps she loved me but needed something or someone new. If that's the case, we'd get a divorce and she could have this new guy. I'd read stories about wives who, for one reason or another, became involved with other men. The thought of my beautiful wife being involved in such things almost made me sick. Until I had proof, I had to trust her. It's the old saying, trust but verify. So when I whispered back that I loved her, I still felt it in my heart, but the thought of her breaking our marriage vows was almost unbearable. The next day was Monday. I left the house first to go to work. Every morning we had breakfast together, then I brushed my teeth and she always gave me a kiss on the lips. A real kiss, not the kind that married couples usually give after years of marriage. In the morning it was still the same. She beamed, saying that she loved me and wished me a good day. I almost felt guilty knowing that I would be meeting with a private investigator at lunchtime, ready to start surveilling my wife because I believed she was now cheating on me after 20 years of what I considered a happy marriage. I was a little surprised when I met a female detective at a small office in Richardson. I expected to see an ex-cop with a grudge against women, dressed in a trench coat and fedora. I guess I'd watched too many old movies. She noticed my surprise and smiled as she explained the process, what the services included, and how much it would cost. Will she notice if the money is transferred? No, we have separate checking accounts, but we have a joint account at Chase for bills and other household expenses. What makes you think she's cheating? I explained what I saw my mother doing, the same behavior that my father discovered and which my mother eventually confessed to. I then described the current situation. "How is your intimate life?" she finally asked. "Have you noticed any changes in her behavior?" "Yes, they're subtle, but they're there. You know the term red flags." She nodded and I chuckled grimly. Not enough to hold a communist parade, but there are enough of them for me to be concerned and suspicious. She explained what they had to offer, including phone monitoring, video surveillance, personal surveillance, and various other investigative services, some of which she admitted might not stand up to scrutiny in court, meaning they might be considered somewhat legally questionable. I had to explain that this wasn't about gathering evidence for a contested divorce. Unless I completely buried my head in the sand, I didn't know if she was meeting someone at lunchtime, if it happened when she was late from work, or if it was just casual encounters when she wanted variety. I had to admit that I didn't know and just wanted to know the truth. They gave me some time to think and said I could call on Friday to start monitoring early next week. It became difficult to be intimate with my wife. I still didn't know the truth, but the thought of sharing her with one or more men was a complete turnoff. I could pretend to be sick, but I chose to be honest. I just wasn't interested. I knew it upset her when I rejected her advances. Finally, she asked if I was stressed at work. "I'm really stressed about something," I said. So my agreeable but distant response seemed to satisfy her curiosity. She clung to me as always, whispering that she loved me. On Wednesday, I called the detective agency, asking them to start immediately. I needed to know because it was starting to drive me crazy. I wondered if it was all in my head. It's not surprising that so many spouses who find themselves in the position of being deceived suffer psychological trauma from this. In the end, although I paid for their services and they did find incriminating evidence, it only took a month of my distant behavior for her to finally show her true colors. By that time, I was reading literature every day about cheating spouses, whether men or women, all the signs of cheating, how they mislead their partners, and what spouses can do after the breakup of a marriage. I was already prepared. I started putting things in my truck, including what was called a go bag. I had already contacted a construction company in Denver through my network at Turner, and they were interested in bringing me on as a senior project manager. My plan was to relocate there temporarily while the divorce went through. My father now owned our home outright. No mention was made of my wife's lease, and with luck, she would be out within a couple of months. It was Friday when I returned home at the usual time. I usually found Rebecca in the living room watching TV and holding a glass of wine. When I walked in, we would usually order takeout from one of the restaurants along Central Expressway, talk about our week, maybe plan the weekend, cuddle, and then head to the bedroom. Friday nights had always been wonderful. When the kids were finally out of the house, we had reconnected on many levels, sometimes barely leaving the bedroom until Sunday. Instead, I heard her busy in the bathroom. I almost laughed to myself. The situation was so cliché. I grabbed a Shiner Bock from the kitchen before sitting down on the couch. You never think this will happen to you. I waited in the dimly lit living room until she appeared. I expected to see her in a provocative little black dress. Instead, she wore a bright blouse, a short skirt, pantyhose, and heels. She had styled her hair, put on makeup, and wore jewelry. She looked stunning. Too bad it wasn't for me. I knew right away that this was textbook behavior. "Oh, Daniel, I didn't know you were home. I came home at the usual time, Rebecca. You were clearly too busy getting ready for whatever you were going to do. Where are you going?" She took a deep breath. "I'm going out tonight, Daniel, with Dr. Patterson from work." "Why?" "It's just a work thing." It was a blatant lie. I knew who Dr. Patterson was. He was the chief of cardiology at Presbyterian's main campus, was married, had children, and was similar in age to us. I'm not sure what she expected me to say, but the moment had come when a man simply washes his hands of the situation. If she expected me to beg or plead, she clearly didn't know me at all. She knew my position on monogamy and fidelity. Standing up, she met my gaze as I walked toward her. I stared at her and she eventually looked away. I smiled as I walked into the kitchen. "Aren't you going to say anything, Daniel?" "No." She probably had no idea how prepared I was. I guess we were both good actors. The only difference was that I hadn't broken her heart with lies. "Okay, good. I'll be back later, then. We'll talk." I didn't say anything but followed her to the door. She stopped and looked at me, looking more unsure than I had ever seen her. Whether it was a feeling of guilt or not, I no longer knew and I didn't care. "Good night, Daniel," she said quietly. "Goodbye, Rebecca." She should have understood what I meant, but apparently she thought I would just be another one of those men who put up with such nonsense. But I wasn't going to tolerate that kind of behavior. I had no interest in an open marriage or sharing my wife. As soon as she left, I put my plan into action. I grabbed my go bag and packed another suitcase, putting them in my truck. I went online to our Chase bank account, grateful that everything can now be done through banking apps. We had very little debt, just one credit card each, which I paid off and canceled immediately. I paid the upcoming bills and then transferred most of our savings from our joint account to my own. I left her enough to cover a month or two's rent and bills. After that, she would be on her own. Possession is 9/10 of the law. She didn't own the house, and I would be long gone when she realized our savings were gone too. Walking around the house for the last time, I couldn't help but sigh. So many good memories were now tainted. After grabbing another beer, I had 3 calls to make. The first one would be easy, the last 2 would be difficult. Dad, it's confirmed. She's cheating on me. She even admitted that she's going out with another man tonight. The plan goes into effect now. Where are you going? Denver. I have a new job lined up there for at least 12 months. Once the divorce is finalized, I may move back to Dallas, but that remains to be seen. Okay, son. I'll make sure she doesn't know where you are. New number. I'll sort it out as soon as I get there. I'll send you my new address as soon as I find a place to live. Be careful on the road, and don't do anything stupid. Dad, I'm just leaving my cheating wife. Unfortunately, both father and son sounded a little sad. You didn't do anything wrong, Daniel. Just find comfort in what you're doing, and soon you'll be able to move on. Just know that Linda and I love you. Call your kids. I'm calling them next. Good luck, son. We'll talk soon. Calling my kids was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I called my daughter first. She would always be Daddy's little girl. When I explained the situation, she started crying on the other end of the line. It broke my heart to hear my little girl cry because her daddy was hurting. I assured her that I would always love her, but I would be gone for a while. I promised to email her all my new details once I was settled, but I wasn't planning on telling anyone just yet. As for my son, he showed the composure one would expect from a young man. He called his mother a cheater, and the only question he had for me was what I was going to do about it. I'll find out where he lives and inform his wife, I admitted. She deserves to know the truth. Besides, I have no desire for revenge, Michael. This isn't fiction, this is real life. I'm heartbroken right now, but all I'm going to do is wait for the divorce and then somehow rearrange my life. I'm only 43, 44 when the divorce is finalized. What about counseling? Can she request it? Marriage counseling isn't mandatory in Texas, Michael. You've read too many stories based on other states' laws. As long as we've been separated for 60 days, I can file for divorce. Since we're both adults with adult children, I don't even have to be present in court, although I will be there to make sure everything goes smoothly. She cannot demand counseling since we have been married for 20 years without any history of seeking it. Well, I'd be careful, Dad. You know how these things can go. If she makes her case convincingly enough, then I'll just present my evidence to any counselor, put the pictures in front of them, and ask them if they would stay married to someone who deceived them. Okay, Dad. Well, take care of yourself and keep me posted when you get settled into your new place. I think Mom will try to contact me. She knows I'll be honest with her. I'll protect you from any drama, I assured him. Thanks, Michael. Talk to you soon. That was it. I wrote Rebecca a short letter explaining that I was leaving and that she would hear from my father soon. I didn't explain why. I left that as a little surprise. I also mentioned that I had already called our children and told them the truth. Just like my father had done, she could tell her parents that I left, but if I started receiving insults or requests for reconciliation, I would send them proof. My last act was to take off my wedding ring and put it on the coffee table along with the letter and all the evidence. These were copies, as I kept the originals in case I needed to use them for any reason. As I got into my truck, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but I felt all the stress I had been carrying melt away. I drove away from Allen, booked a hotel room on the western outskirts of Dallas in preparation for my trip to Denver. I had 2 weeks to get there and get my life organized, so I took my time, thinking I'd stay in a few small towns along the way, places like Amarillo and Colorado Springs. I arrived in Denver a week later at the office where I would be working Mountain States Construction, a regional construction company that specialized in commercial and healthcare projects. I was greeted by several people I recognized from previous corporate conferences. I already knew my responsibilities, so knowing that I was a stranger in their city, they took me out and showed me around, suggesting areas to consider for housing. I lived in a hotel for a month while I organized a place to live and finalized my employment contract. The pay was actually better than what I was making in Dallas, and they were interested in making the position permanent if things worked out. I ended up choosing a modern 3-bedroom apartment in the Highland neighborhood after doing my research and finding out that it was one of the better areas in the city. I wasn't interested in purchasing immediately, as I wanted to see how things went with the new job and the divorce proceedings. My goal was to eventually return home to Dallas after the divorce was finalized, but I was keeping my options open. After I settled in and changed my number, I informed my father, siblings, and children about my new circumstances. Emma immediately called, wanting to come visit. I missed her terribly, and I arranged for her to fly out for a month. My son was finishing his studies at UT Dallas, but since Christmas was only 3 months away, he would come to see me then, as he could stay for a few weeks. As for my father, he kept me updated on what was going on with Rebecca back in Texas. "You know she didn't come home until the next morning," Dad told me during one of our weekly calls. I didn't cancel the private detectives until the next day because I was wondering what she was doing that night. They went out to dinner at the Mansion restaurant on Turtle Creek, and it was quite romantic. Then they spent the night at the Four Seasons downtown. I didn't need to know anything else. I thanked them for their efforts and paid them, as their services were no longer needed. Well, I heard through third parties and also from her. She came home to find your wedding ring, your letter, and the evidence. She called me, your children, and her family being hysterical. You obviously didn't answer the phone, and I know she sent you emails. Any call from her went to voicemail and was deleted. I marked any email from her as spam. Well, that was just the beginning of her problems. I showed up at her door a week later and presented the lease we had signed, then showed her the papers that you gave me for the house. Her face went pale when she realized that everything was completely legal. I gave her 3 months to find suitable housing, and if she doesn't leave, I'll call the police to evict her. She's still living there, but I know she's looking for a place to move. Did she ask about me? Of course she asked. Your family, your children, your friends, even your workplace at Turner Construction. The guilt is eating her up because she ruined 20 years of marriage. Did she explain to anyone why? Not really. Of course she apologizes, but I heard the same nonsense from your mother. She apologized for getting caught, not for cheating on you. Cheaters always live in a fantasy world where they believe they didn't do anything wrong. The usual garbage, that it was just physical, that she never meant to hurt anyone. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me from my apartment in Denver's Highland neighborhood. I never broke our marriage vows for just physical. And believe me, from my 30s until my early 40s, I received plenty of opportunities. But I loved my wife and would never break our vows. I got a second chance with Linda, Daniel. Give yourself time to heal, time to grieve your marriage, and when you're ready, open your heart to someone else. There are millions of good women in the world. Thank you, Dad. Love you. Love you too, son. Take care of yourself. I was immersed in work and became focused on my new role with Mountain States Construction. The transition was going well, and they had already hinted that they wanted to make my position permanent. I began traveling around Colorado, visiting various construction sites and suppliers in Boulder, Colorado Springs, and Fort Collins, while using every weekend to explore different regions, especially the Rocky Mountains. I discovered that my divorce situation made me a tough negotiator, unwilling to give an inch unless it benefited my company. At least my bosses were happy with my work. My daughter came to visit a month after I settled into the apartment. I met her at Denver International Airport, where she shouted, "Daddy," and ran to me, hugging me tightly. She immediately began to cry, whispering how much I meant to her and that she just wanted me to be happy again. She stayed with me for a week. Although I worked from home most of the time, but when I had free time, we talked about everything under the sun. We drove up to Boulder one afternoon, walked around the Pearl Street Mall, and hiked some easy trails in the Flatirons. She told me that her mother had bombarded her with calls trying to explain her side of the story. Although I didn't want to show her the evidence, I finally gave in and showed her the report I had received from the private investigator. When she finished reading, she was in tears and almost trembling with anger toward her mother. That wasn't my goal, but despite my insistence that her mother still loved her, I had a bad feeling that it would take her a long time to forgive her, if ever. The day she left was painful for both of us, as I knew she wanted to stay with me just to keep me company. I hugged her goodbye for what seemed like hours at DIA before she had to leave for her flight back to Dallas. I could barely hold back my tears. During those months as my marriage was crumbling, I was angry but not particularly emotional. I have to admit I had to sit in my truck for a few minutes after my daughter left and let myself feel the full weight of the situation. It made me realize that I felt quite alone, but her visit also inspired me. I talked to her every evening. My son called me at least once every couple of days. My siblings knew what had happened. My little sister promised to come visit as soon as she could arrange time off from her job at Bank of America. My father kept me informed of everything that was happening back in the Dallas area. Even some guys from my old office at Turner Construction seemed to know some things, but mostly they just called to chat and try to make me laugh. 6 weeks before Christmas, something unexpected happened. I was walking along the aisles of the King Soopers supermarket in Highland, feeling particularly bored. Grocery shopping was always an activity that Rebecca and I did together at the Tom Thumb back in Allen. We made each other laugh, were silly, and it was always a good experience. Now it felt like a chore, especially in this unfamiliar store where I still had to search for everything. I was reaching for a bottle of ranch dressing in the salad dressing aisle, not noticing that a woman was reaching for the same bottle. Our hands collided, and we both turned and looked at each other. I'm sure my jaw dropped slightly when her cheeks instantly turned red. "Sorry," I said. "No, it's my fault. I didn't notice you. Please take the bottle. I can choose something else. I can't just take it. It's the last one." I don't know where the confidence for the following words came from, but they just tumbled out. "Well, take the bottle if you agree to have coffee with me later." I didn't know who she was, her name, or anything about her, but that brief touch sparked something in me. Just based on the way she looked, I wanted to get to know her better. That I extended my hand. "I'm Daniel." She smiled as she shook my hand, and I noticed how soft her skin was. "I'm Sarah. Do you often meet women in supermarkets?" "Daniel? No, you're the first. And are you free? If not, I'll withdraw my invitation. If so, I hope you say yes." She was a brunette with hair that fell almost to her shoulders. Her bright blue eyes were framed by a pair of thin-rimmed glasses that sat on her cute nose. Her lips were full and natural, giving her a face of classical beauty. I didn't know her age, and I wanted to appreciate her figure but restrained myself, although I guessed that she was about 6 inches shorter than me. I don't know what she thought of me in response, but the smile suggested that she liked what she saw. "I'd like to have some coffee. Why don't you give me your number?" After I gave her my number, she sent me a text immediately. "I'll finish shopping in about half an hour, then I'll need to get everything home to my apartment. But I can meet you in a couple of hours if you want." "Are you local?" "Yes, I live in the Highlands neighborhood too." "What about you?" "Same area. I'm still getting used to Denver. Moved here from Texas a few months ago. I hate traveling far just to shop. Tell me where you want to meet, and I'll be there." As she pushed her cart forward, she placed her hand on my forearm. "See you soon, Daniel." I hadn't been on a coffee date in a long time. When I heard the bell chime as I entered the coffee shop she had suggested, a local place called Highlands Coffee on 32nd Avenue, I met her gaze and saw something in her eyes, a kind of pain, just like what I saw in mine when I looked in the mirror. After rushing through the rest of my shopping, I used self-checkout and literally raced home to my apartment complex, throwing everything into the refrigerator or cabinets before showering and changing. Before I left, I sent Sarah a message asking if she liked the coffee shop she had mentioned. She responded a couple of minutes later, saying it was one of her favorite local spots and wondering if I'd been there before. I admit I was a little nervous as I waited for her to arrive. I had been faithful to my wife throughout our marriage, but this was my first real date in over 20 years. She entered wearing a beautiful cranberry-colored sweater and dark jeans that emphasized her figure. The rich color only accentuated her natural beauty. Her figure was impressive, and she had beautiful legs. Standing up to greet her, I kissed her on the cheek and was surprised when she briefly hugged me. After ordering her latte, she insisted on paying for her own. We started getting to know each other better. She admitted that she admired my confidence when I asked her out in a busy supermarket. But when you touched my hand, Daniel, I felt something, she added. So it wasn't just me? No, I replied, reaching for her hand. I felt it too. She blushed but nodded. I often read about such things in books, but I thought it was just fiction. She held out her hand to me and I took it. We smiled as I held her hand in mine. I just felt it again, she whispered. I felt it too, I replied. We didn't delve too deeply into personal stories on our first date. I learned her name, that she was available. She smiled, showing me her left hand, although it was obvious there had once been a ring on that finger, and that she was a senior librarian at the University of Colorado Denver's Auraria Library. She specialized in research assistance and had a master's degree in library and information science from the University of Denver. She had no children of her own, lived in a small apartment alone in the Highlands neighborhood, had several close friends, and her parents lived in Littleton, a suburb south of Denver. She had a younger sister who was married and lived in Boulder, and Sarah was 33 years old. Oh, I said, I'm 43. I don't care how old you are, Daniel. I care about what kind of person you are. When she said this, I admitted that I had separated from my wife. Noticing the nervous look on her face, I sighed and asked if she wanted another drink, since it would take some explaining. I didn't want to tell her everything on the first meeting, but if necessary, I would. She made me smile when she said, No, Daniel, I'll trust you for now. I can see you're hurting. Is it that noticeable? I saw the same look in the mirror when he broke my heart. It gets easier over time, but at first it's day by day, then weeks and months, and soon the person who broke your heart ceases to matter. She smiled at me again. Maybe you'll meet the right person who can start to heal that heart. It happens to some people later than expected, but it happens eventually. My father said the same thing. Your father is a wise man. We finished our second drinks and headed outside, walking to her car in the small parking lot behind the coffee shop. There was that awkward moment, not knowing whether to kiss her, hug her, or just wish her well. When I hugged her, part of me didn't want to let go. I couldn't imagine finding someone I liked again so quickly. I think we were both reluctant to break the hug. Call me this week, Daniel. I'd like to talk to you again. What about tonight? I asked. She laughed, and it felt like music to my ears. You can call me whenever you want. I called her that night and then every night. I didn't want to interfere with her regular week helping students with research at the university library, but I asked if she would like to go out to dinner on Friday night. When she said she would be glad to, I literally danced around the apartment after I hung up. I hadn't felt such joy for a long time. At the office on Thursday, more than one person commented on my cheerful mood. Everyone knew about my divorce, so they immediately assumed that I had met someone. I didn't want to get ahead of myself, but I told them that I had enjoyed the coffee date and that I would be having dinner with the same lady on Friday. I'm not interested in casual dating, I added. I date one woman at a time. If it doesn't work, I'll try again with someone else. The restaurant I chose was Guard and Grace, a steakhouse in downtown Denver that had rave reviews online, but I had never been there. It was an upscale but not overly formal place, and the food was said to be excellent. Even though it was a nice restaurant, I still wore dress pants instead of a full suit, a long-sleeve button-down shirt, leather shoes, and some cologne, although I did leave some stubble. There was a bar in the restaurant, and I smiled when I saw Sarah already there waiting for me. She was wearing a beautiful black dress that was elegant but not too formal. When we hugged hello, she whispered, "Wow, if you clean up this nice for the second date, I can't imagine how it would be by the end of the first month." The hostess came over to show us to our table. Luckily, we got a corner booth so we could sit next to each other and talk more privately. After ordering drinks, she got a glass of Colorado wine from a local vineyard. We continued to chat about our week. It was impossible not to notice how passionately she talked about her work at the library, especially helping graduate students with their research projects. But when she admitted that she wanted to have her own children someday, I began to talk about mine. I think we were both slightly annoyed when the server came back asking about our order, as it disrupted our conversation. We agreed to split an appetizer and dessert but ordered main courses for each of us. It was surprisingly easy for me to carry on a conversation. I was fascinated by her face, voice, and mannerisms. I'm pretty sure she noticed me looking at her more than once, because she blushed every time. The food was excellent, no complaints, and the servers were attentive without being overly intrusive. After dinner, I paid, although she offered to split the bill. Then I asked if she wanted another drink. She agreed immediately, taking me by the hand and leading me to a bar she knew called Williams Graham, a speakeasy-style place in the Highlands. It was a quiet place with low lighting and craft cocktails. There were more intimate seating areas, and Sarah enjoyed a whiskey cocktail while I had a bourbon neat. "What happened, Daniel?" she finally asked. I told her everything. How Rebecca and I met, our life together in Allen, our children, our careers. Then I explained what happened with my father, my relationship with my mother, their divorce, and what I learned. I slowly realized that my wife was doing the same thing. I confessed how I left and what I had done weeks before all this. I'm still married, Sarah, but we're separated. I moved here to Denver to ensure the divorce went through smoothly. I'm not sure if you think what I'm doing is wrong. I won't be offended if you think so, but my marriage is over. It exists only on paper. I will return to Dallas to finalize the divorce when the time comes. "What if you meet someone here?" she asked. "Then I'll discuss our options with them. My kids are in Dallas. It's hard being so far away from them." I had to turn away, admitting it upset me. I really miss them every day. She put her finger on my cheek to make me look at her, then kissed me softly. I felt better as she hugged me, resting her head on my shoulder. "My ex-husband was a monster, Daniel. He won me over when I was 19 and he was 25. The age difference didn't bother me, but my parents warned me against him. I was in love and didn't listen to them. I didn't see the warning signs that appeared within a couple of months of marriage. I was surprised that he allowed me to work, but that was all I was allowed to do. Gradually, he isolated me from my family and friends. I had to work at the university library and then go home and be his personal servant and available companion." She paused, and my stomach dropped, knowing that this was only the beginning of the story. Stroking her arm, she pressed herself closer to me. "I'm guessing it got worse?" I asked gently. "He began to control everything I did. If I objected to anything, it meant I didn't respect my husband. If I dressed in a way he didn't approve of or came home late from work, it meant I was being inappropriate. If I spent money on what I wanted, it meant I was financially irresponsible. He never said anything positive. He was a sea of constant criticism and control. I can't imagine wanting to control or criticize you, Sarah," I said quietly. I knew I had to get away. He was becoming more unstable, and I knew that one day he would either seriously hurt me or worse. I called my father from work one day and cried into the phone, asking him to save me. He came with my 2 uncles and a few of his friends from his construction company. My ex-husband even tried to fight them off, but intimidating a woman is one thing, and dealing with 5 angry men is another. My father handled the situation, and then they helped me pack. We immediately went to the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office and got a restraining order against him. I got divorced 7 years ago, and he doesn't know where I am. The restraining order is still in effect. I barely dated, she said, looking at me. I was afraid for a long time. She raised her eyes, looking at me. And then I met you in that supermarket. I had feelings that I hadn't experienced for so long. I never felt them for him. She was a bit unsteady from the drinks, so I offered to take her home. As I pulled up to her apartment complex, a nice mid-rise building in the Highlands with mountain views, I realized that this was very close to where I lived. After walking her inside, she opened the front door to her apartment and hesitated. I made the decision for both of us, pulling her closer and kissing her again. I had a wonderful evening, Sarah. I'd love to do it again next week. Any night you choose. I'm a pretty good cook, so if you want to come over for dinner, tell me the day, and I'll make something special. I'll cook first, and then you can cook for me and we'll compare. She smiled as she replied. What day? Wednesday, Daniel. Although I expect your usual evening call and lots of messages, she said, kissing me again. Play your cards right, and you might even get a surprise or 2 in the messages. What are you doing tomorrow? Nothing. Why? Want to go hiking? Colorado has some amazing trails, and I'd love to show you around the mountains. You just want to see me in hiking gear, she teased, her eyes lighting up. I'm curious what you look like in outdoor attire, I admitted with a grin. Plus, I need to explore more of Colorado. I feel like I'm missing out. Just text me when you can pick me up. I know some great trails near Golden. I kissed her again and somehow managed to force myself to head toward the stairs. When I got home to my apartment just a few blocks away, I heard my phone buzz a couple of times, but I didn't open it until I was inside and sitting on the couch with a course. When in Colorado, right? Hi, Daniel. I had a wonderful evening, she had texted. Hi, Sarah. Part of me wanted you to stay with me tonight, but I don't want to rush things. I don't want to rush things either, I replied. When you come over on Wednesday night, bring a change of clothes. I want you to stay, but it's too early for anything more than sleeping in the same bed. I'm tired of sleeping alone, Sarah. Me too. I'm already in bed. It's a queen size, but it seems empty. I didn't feel this loneliness until I met you. I'll pick you up at 9 a.m. First breakfast at a place I heard about, then hiking. What's your favorite color for outdoor gear? Usually blue, but for hiking, I think earth tones work best. I have the perfect outfit for Colorado trails. See you in the morning, Sarah. Sweet dreams. Beautiful, I replied. Her last message ended with a heart emoji. Arriving at her apartment the next morning, she called me upstairs. After knocking on her door and hearing her call me inside, I was greeted by her in proper hiking pants, a fitted long-sleeve moisture-wicking shirt, and hiking boots. She had her hair in a practical ponytail and looked absolutely gorgeous. What do you think? Will I need protection from all the mountain men? She asked with her hands on her hips. Her smile widened before she disappeared, returning with a well-equipped backpack. After putting our packs in the trunk of my truck next to hers, I took her to a cafe in Golden called Windy Saddle Cafe, known for its hearty breakfast and being a favorite stop for hikers and mountain bikers. By the time we were ready to start our hike on the Clear Creek Trail, the parking area had already started to fill up with other outdoor enthusiasts. The Colorado mountains were breathtaking, and Sarah proved to be an excellent hiking companion. We spent the entire day exploring the trails, taking in the views of the Front Range, and getting to know each other better. As we hiked, she told me more about her work at the university library and her love of books and research. I found myself drawn to her intelligence and her passion for learning. She had a way of making even academic topics seem fascinating. "You have strong hands, Daniel, and it feels very nice," she said as I helped her over a rocky section of the trail. Her soft hands sliding into mine, and eventually she was walking close beside me. I turned to look at her, and she was smiling up at me, her eyes bright with happiness and the crisp mountain air bringing color to her cheeks. We spent the entire day in the mountains, enjoying the crisp October air and stunning views of the changing aspen leaves. As the sun began to set, we found ourselves at a scenic overlook. The city of Denver spread out below us like a carpet of lights with the mountains rising dramatically behind us. "This is beautiful," she said, leaning against me as we watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "It is," I agreed, though I was looking at her rather than the view. We stayed until the first stars emerged in the clear mountain air. As we walked back to my truck, holding hands, she snuggled up to me in the cool evening air. "Want to stay for a drink?" she asked when we arrived at her apartment. "I would like to, but if I stay, I won't want to leave." She came up to me and kissed me. "Come home, change your clothes, have a drink, and stay the night." I'm sure I broke a few speed limits driving home to my apartment. I ran inside, threw my things quickly into a bag, grabbed everything I needed, and raced back to her place. When I knocked on the door, slightly out of breath, she opened it and laughed at me as I caught my breath. She grabbed me by the shirt, pulled me inside, closed the door, and we ended up on her couch. "Be patient with me," she whispered. "I don't want to rush things, Daniel. I can't make the same mistake again. We have all the time we need." Sarah pulled away reluctantly, disappearing to put on her pajamas, soft flannel pants and a CU Denver t-shirt. I smiled as she looked visibly embarrassed when she returned. We cuddled up as we enjoyed a couple of drinks and watched some TV, although we continued to talk about everything under the sun. It wasn't very late when she got up and led me to the bedroom. The room was cozy and filled with bookshelves lining the walls, and on the nightstand, there were several novels and a small reading lamp. "Well, now I know how to surprise you," I said. "Books and flowers. And good coffee," she added with a smile. "I'm a simple woman." Climbing under the sheets, she pressed her back to me. Within a couple of minutes, I felt her relax completely. I asked her to turn over, and she pressed herself against me, hugging me. She fell asleep within a couple of minutes. I stayed awake a little longer, watching her sleep. She looked so peaceful and beautiful. I knew how incredibly lucky I was to have such a person enter my life. The next morning, she made us breakfast. Real pancakes from scratch and good coffee. And we spent the entire day just lazily relaxing in her apartment. Any silences were comfortable, and we filled those moments with lots of hugs and kisses. We teased each other constantly, but I was ready to wait for her. When she sat on my lap for the last time before I left that evening, she seemed almost ready to give in to temptation before I quietly told her to stop. "Take your time, Sarah," I whispered. "We have our whole lives ahead of us." I already knew that I was in love with her, and I had a feeling she felt the same. The only concern I had was hoping this wasn't just a rebound from my previous relationship. I had just left my wife of 20 years and fallen in love with the first woman I met. But I wanted to believe that it was fate that brought us together. There was a reason we met that day in King Soopers. We didn't text constantly during the day, given her busy job at the university library, but we talked every night. The guys at work at Mountain States Construction knew I was now seeing someone, while I kept my family in Dallas informed that I had met a special woman. My father called and kept me updated on Rebecca's situation. It turns out she was on the verge of moving out of the house but was still trying to find me. No one told her anything, so she thought I might still be in Denver and hoped to somehow make contact. Wednesday couldn't come soon enough. Sarah prepared a delicious dinner, homemade lasagna with a salad and garlic bread that was both satisfying and filling, but I was especially impressed by the dessert she prepared for us. A chocolate cake she had made from scratch. Rubbing my stomach after we finished, I said, "They say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach." Sarah grinned back at me, moving her chair closer. I put my hand on her bare thigh since she was wearing a dress. She looked into my eyes with a look that made me wonder what would happen next. As I slowly moved my hand up her thigh, I felt her move slightly closer. "Are we just going to sleep together tonight, Sarah?" I asked quietly. "No, Daniel," she replied softly. We cleaned up everything after dinner together before she led me into the bedroom. "I love you," she whispered as I turned to kiss her. I couldn't help but smile. "I love you too," I whispered back. "Isn't it too early?" "There's no such thing as too soon, Sarah. If that's how we feel about each other, then that's how it is." I felt it on our first coffee date. I knew I had met the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. She took my hand and kissed me again. "And if you want to be closer to your kids, I'll come with you." "Are you sure? This is a big decision." "There's nothing keeping me here, Daniel. My parents are still in good health, and my sister is happily married in Boulder. I won't rush into a decision now, but my heart says to go with you. I'd like to meet your children. They'll be here for Christmas. Then we can all celebrate Christmas with my family in Littleton." She visited my apartment for the first time that evening. She called it definitely a bachelor pad, but it was clean and tidy, although she understood why I kept it simple, since it was only a temporary place where I lived. After I cooked her dinner, grilled steaks with roasted vegetables, something I'd perfected over the years, hearing the satisfied sounds she made, I knew I had made an impression with my cooking skills. "Sarah, I don't remember the last time I felt so much love," I said. "I'm not saying this just because Rebecca broke my heart and cheated on me. Maybe we were just coasting along in those final years. Maybe because this is new, or maybe because I'm older and have more life experience. But I absolutely love you, Sarah Mitchell, and one day soon I want you to be Sarah Harrison." "And I would say yes to that proposal," she whispered back. Life was blissful for the next few weeks. We did not spend a single night apart. I must admit we spent more nights in her apartment than in mine, since she had a much more pleasant place to live and it was better furnished. She spoke to my dad on the phone several times, while I kept my kids informed about our relationship. They didn't want to make any judgments until they met her in person. Meanwhile, my position at Mountain States Construction was working out better than expected. They had officially offered to make my role permanent with a significant salary increase, and I was seriously considering staying in Denver long-term. The company had several major projects lined up, including a new hospital complex and a university expansion, which would keep me busy for years. I called my son a week before Christmas and asked about his mother and what she was doing. I told her I wouldn't be home for Christmas. "I think she realized you're not in Dallas anymore," Michael said. "Emma hates her, Dad. I mean real hate. She spoke to her once since you left, and after that conversation I almost cut off contact with her too. I talked to Grandpa last night. He'll be flying out to Denver in a couple of days." "What about Grandpa and Linda?" "I'll see them when I get back to Dallas. Sarah will probably come with you when you come back, right? Y'all will just have to find her a job and buy a house as close as possible so she doesn't have to commute too far." "Are you sure you don't want to stay in Denver, Dad?" "Emma and I have discussed it, and we're both seriously considering moving there to be closer to you. I know Emma is thinking about it too, and her husband Tom is all for it. He hates the traffic and heat in Dallas these days." I looked at Sarah, not hiding my surprise. "I still have to go back to finalize the divorce." "Don't make any hasty decisions, Michael. I know how it sounds, but my decision to leave your mother was well thought out." "Oh, I totally get that, Dad. As much as I hate to say it about her, she's still trying to convince people that she didn't do anything wrong and that it's your fault for leaving." Sarah went with me to Denver International Airport the day my daughter and her husband arrived. She brought Tom, but as soon as Emma saw me, she dropped her things and ran to me. It was like those days when I would pick her up from school when she was little, and she would be very happy to see me. She cried again for a few minutes, and when I introduced her to Sarah, they both soon burst into tears. Tom and I looked at each other and shrugged helplessly. The next day, my son surprised me by knocking on my apartment door. "Dad!" he exclaimed before we hugged. We both had to wipe our cheeks afterward. "Well, at least he looks just like you," Sarah stated as I took him inside to introduce him to her. I knew what she meant, but I had already had a paternity test done while going through the divorce process. Rebecca hadn't cheated on me early in our relationship, but I still needed that reassurance. On Christmas morning, Sarah woke up in my arms. Someone knocked on the door. "Stop fooling around, Daddy," Emma called out. Sarah hugged me tighter, clearly embarrassed. I couldn't stop laughing. "I'm making breakfast, and then we need to go to Sarah's parents in Littleton. We'll be out in a minute, honey." I thought she had left. I heard her say before adding, "I'm glad you're happy and with someone you love, Daddy." "Thank you, sweetheart." Later that morning, I loaded all 5 of us into my truck to drive to Sarah's parents' house in Littleton. The back was filled with gifts, and they were all carried inside their beautiful ranch-style home with views of the Front Range. Her mother, Patricia, fell in love with my daughter within 2 minutes, and I'm pretty sure my son was adopted as one of their own grandchildren, just like they had adopted me as their son. I called my dad via FaceTime so we could exchange Christmas greetings. My brother, his wife, my sister, her husband, and their children spent Christmas with him and Linda back in Garland. Rebecca had left our previous home a long time ago and moved in with her parents in Frisco. The news that really surprised me was that her former partner, Dr. Patterson, was dismissed from Presbyterian Hospital when his wife used the evidence I had provided to ensure he was fired for gross misconduct and had his medical privileges revoked. Apparently, Rebecca lost her job as well when the hospital learned of her involvement in the scandal and was forced to take a much lower-paying position at a smaller clinic. It was a wonderful day, and my kids took lots of photos for their social media accounts. I had long since deleted my Facebook and Instagram, considering them a waste of time, but I soon received messages from several old friends who contacted my father asking if he knew my phone number. Many people were curious about what happened, so I kept my answers simple. Others gave me information about Rebecca, even though I told them it simply didn't matter. After the required 60-day waiting period, I would file for divorce and return to Dallas to see it completed. Christmas with Sarah and her family in Littleton was fantastic. When she mentioned coming to Dallas with me, I informed her that we would be staying in Denver and someone from my family would join us instead. Her face lit up, and I almost made her cry when I finally gave her the gift she had been hoping for. It was too early to propose, considering I was still technically married, so I bought her a gorgeous necklace and bracelet combination from a local Denver jeweler. She immediately put them on and whispered that she would wear them as often as possible. After we had Christmas dinner, her father, Robert, offered me a beer, and we ended up in his garage where his restored 1967 Camaro was sitting. Working on some maintenance, he said, "I haven't seen Sarah this happy in a long time, Daniel. Part of me thinks that moving away from Denver will be good for her, but would you be happy to stay here forever?" I would stay here for her, and my kids will both move here to be closer to me. My company has offered me a permanent position with a substantial raise. How long will it take for your divorce to be finalized? A few months at most. I was honest with Sarah about everything from the beginning. I take it she cheated on you? Yeah. The affair probably went on for several months, although I only had concrete evidence in the last few weeks before I left Dallas. He shook his head, taking a swig from his cores. Damn. I read about all this cheating nonsense. Why get married at all if you can't keep your commitments? Have you ever heard of those people who want open relationships? The look of disgust on his face said he knew exactly what that meant. Yes, I'm not sure if this is what Rebecca ultimately wanted, but it's one of these new trends going around. Same thing with all these people who want multiple partners and an open relationship so they can cheat while still maintaining their conscience. Honestly, if my wife had asked for that, well, then I would have ended up divorced anyway. It's so disrespectful to even ask someone to do that. Sarah's ex-husband was both cheating and abusive, I said. What he did was systematic control and intimidation that she needed to escape from. She barely found out about the betrayal because the psychological abuse was something she dealt with daily. He squeezed my shoulder. She loves you, Daniel. Just don't break her heart, please. I'm not sure I can handle another call like the one 7 years ago from my little girl. He took a sip from the bottle, looking away, and added quietly, I wanted to hurt him badly, Daniel. He hurt my daughter. The only person who stopped me from doing something I'd regret was her. She didn't want to see her father behind bars. I love her more than anything in the world, I said. We both carry wounds in our hearts. We help heal each other. Good, he smirked. Are you already calling me Dad? If you'll have me. I've suffered greatly myself, so we both understand what it means to be betrayed. We help heal each other. We stayed late at the Mitchell house in Littleton. My daughter drove us home because I had enjoyed a few too many Colorado craft beers. Back at my apartment in Highland, my kids went to bed, and Sarah led me into our bedroom. The next few days were wonderful. We explored more of Colorado, drove up to Vail one day, went skiing at Winter Park another day. For New Year's Eve, I took her to the Brown Palace Hotel downtown Denver. After dinner and drinks at the hotel's historic bar, I walked her back to our room, where a bottle of champagne and chocolate-covered strawberries were waiting. After celebrating the new year in the most intimate way possible, we finally rested, and Sarah snuggled up to me as always. Any wishes for the new year? I asked. More than one. Do you want to hear them? Certainly. I want you to stay here with me, Daniel. I want you to propose to me as soon as your divorce is approved. I'm already looking at rings, she said, holding me tighter. I want children with you, she whispered. I looked at her in surprise, and I couldn't help but smile. Sarah, we are going to get married and start a family. I'll let you know when I'm ready to try, although I'll need to talk to my doctor about it first. I'll let you know when the timing is right. My children left a couple of days later. I hated seeing them go, but once I explained that I would probably stay in Denver if they joined me, they promised to start looking at their options seriously. I called my father and told him the same thing. He advised me to make the best choices for myself but mentioned he was happy where he was with Linda in Garland. He would definitely come visit when he could. The next few months were blissful. I officially accepted the permanent position at Mountain States Construction with a significant raise, which gave me the financial security to plan for the future. I moved in with Sarah permanently in her apartment in Highland. I won't say it was a fairy tale romance. This is real life, but I couldn't remember when I was happier. We were a real team in everything that concerned our lives together. She knew that the shadow of my divorce was still hanging over us, and sometimes it was still on my mind. We both still had trust issues from our past relationships, but we had agreed to always talk about any problems we had. Even though neither of us gave the other any reason to think we were doing anything wrong, our intimate life was wonderful, and we never stopped dating each other. We did almost everything together, and I just couldn't get enough of her presence. Just being around her made me happier. She made me want to be a better man, the perfect man in her eyes. As for Sarah, she showed me so much love that I had already bought an engagement ring by the time I was ready to return to Dallas. She was more nervous than I was during the flight because she knew there were still potential obstacles waiting for us. My father met us at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport with my siblings and children. We stayed with my father and Linda in Garland until the divorce was settled. I had already filed the papers after the 60-day separation period, but my lawyer informed me that Rebecca was trying to contest the divorce. Sitting in his office with Sarah, I was amazed that she was even trying to stop it. I haven't seen her for over 4 months, I stated. I followed the letter of Texas law. I can even prove that I have been living in Denver for the last several months, and she has not lived with me during that time. In fact, we have had no communication at all. While that is true, she still has the right to challenge it, he replied. No judge will actually listen to her arguments, and no counseling will be required. I assume Sarah is your partner. Rebecca's cheating was the original reason. Now I have a better reason to divorce her. Once we get divorced, I will propose to Sarah, and we will get married as soon as possible. We plan to have children as soon as the divorce is granted, Sarah added. I stopped taking birth control a few weeks ago. I'm hoping that celebrating when he gets the divorce will lead to starting our family. Okay. I'll talk to her lawyer and find out what she wants. She can't really do much, but a smart lawyer could try to delay things. Staying with my father did not limit our intimate life. In fact, my father was quite the character. He might have been closer to 70, and Linda was 5 years his junior, but I'm sure I heard them expressing their love at least one evening. Sarah simply said it was kind of sweet that they were still so attracted to each other. I hugged her and agreed. Then we also expressed our love quietly. 3 days later, my lawyer called me. Rebecca will sign the divorce agreement, so it will be a joint statement and therefore will be completed without delay. If you agree to speak to her one last time. I discussed this with Sarah, who supported me no matter what I chose. My lawyer suggested that I just talk to her so that everything could be worked out. My father actually agreed. You're with Sarah now, son, he said. You're going to get married, start a new family, and your kids will soon be with you in Denver. Are you still angry at her? Not really. I'm moving on. She probably isn't. It's her own fault, and I understand why you don't even want to see her. But let her have her say and then just leave it behind. Okay. I'll talk to my lawyer and ask him to arrange everything. The next week, we found ourselves at the Dallas County Courts building. My lawyer explained that once the meeting was over and Rebecca signed the documents, the judge would be ready to sign off on our divorce, and I would be a free man. For months after I had left Dallas, I hadn't seen Rebecca since the night she went on her date with Dr. Patterson. She was waiting in the conference room as Sarah and I approached. My lawyer explained that Rebecca was inside with her lawyer and no one else was there. Taking Sarah's hand, I led her and my lawyer into the room. Rebecca looked up in shock to see me walking in with another woman. I barely looked at her as I sat Sarah down in the empty seat, pulling it out and checking to see if she was comfortable before I sat down in the middle, with my lawyer to my left. Taking Sarah's left hand in my right, I made sure our hands were on the table in plain sight. She added to this by moving her chair as close to mine as possible, resting her head on my shoulder. I finally looked at Rebecca. To be honest, she looked terrible. I'd heard often enough that life hadn't been easy since I left her. I had no sympathy. She made a choice that cost her everything. There was no communication with my daughter at all. Our son hardly spoke to her. My entire family had cut off all contact with her. From what I heard, even her own family was disappointed but felt they had to support her. And when my father evicted her from the house, "Okay, Rebecca, have your say so we can end this divorce. I have a life that I would like to continue. You are the past, to which you firmly belong." "Who is she?" she asked quietly, gesturing towards Sarah. "This is Sarah Mitchell. As soon as our divorce is finalized, I will propose to her. Soon she will become Sarah Harrison, and I will naturally answer yes to his proposal, since I want nothing more than to be his wife and the mother of his future children," Sarah added confidently. I smiled for a moment, although I didn't take my eyes off Rebecca. "Once she says yes, we will organize a simple wedding ceremony. With any luck, by the time we get married, she will also be carrying our child." I knew it would hurt to hear all this. I still knew that woman well enough to see that the pain in her eyes was real. "You've moved on quite quickly," she stated. "It wasn't me who cheated, Rebecca. It was you. I remember leaving evidence. You never let me explain. I went out that night and you didn't say anything. You didn't fight for me. I didn't have to fight for you because I was your damn husband. So in the end, you weren't worth fighting for. You cheated on me, Rebecca. You showed your true colors after 20 years of marriage. Remember our conversations about monogamy and infidelity? I warned you that if you turned out to be like my mother, I would leave without hesitation. You just made my decision easier. I won't even dignify that with a response, because it's not true. Your only regret is that you got caught. Not that you proved our marriage was nothing more than a sham, and you're worthless, just like my own mother. Her lawyer cleared his throat. I looked at him firmly. If you don't like what I say, then too bad. She wanted to talk. Okay. I also have the right to speak. I was confused. Betrayal is not confusion. Cheating is a series of decisions you made. It was just physical. Here it comes, the excuse many use to justify their decisions. Sorry, but most people associate physical intimacy with love, and considering you were my wife, I should have been the one you were intimate with, not some doctor you work with. We discussed this before our wedding, Rebecca. I warned you what would happen if you cheated on me. The thing is, you forgot that my mother cheated. As soon as I pulled my head out of the sand, I realized what you were doing, so I was just collecting evidence. If you had said no that night, would you still have left? Yes, I would have left anyway. I wouldn't have left the same way. But what you did that night was so disrespectful that you deserved everything that happened after. You took all our money. Consider this compensation for 20 wasted years. I stopped and shook my head. No, that's not entirely fair and not entirely correct. You gave me our 2 children, it wasn't entirely wasted. I also made sure they were mine. This upset her. I never cheated on you then. No, you just became unfaithful later. You lost our house. No, I gave it to my father. It's still in his name and he's renting it out. He already told me he'll sell it and give me most of the money, so I can buy another house where I live now. You didn't even give me a chance, Daniel. Because you don't deserve it, Rebecca. Where do you live now? It's none of your business. I don't want you to know this information. The day I left you, you stopped being important to me. Our children have grown up and can choose who they want to be with on special days, be it birthdays or holiday periods. She fell silent because she knew that nothing she said would change my mind. Just sign the papers and move on, Sarah stated firmly. He hasn't seen or spoken to you in months. He's moving on. He loves me, and I love him. We're going to get married, have our own family, and grow old together. You threw it all away. I held Sarah closer and whispered that everything would be fine and that I would never let her down. He owns my heart, and I know that I own his. I didn't mean to, Rebecca said, meeting my gaze with tears. I kept my face still. Tears wouldn't work on me this time. I still love you, Daniel. Good for you, I replied coldly. The tone made her almost jump. I don't hate you anymore. Don't be fooled by the cold tone. I just don't care about you. You stopped being my problem the day you let another man touch you. We sat in silence until her lawyer finally cleared his throat. Rebecca, it's clear this isn't going anywhere, her lawyer said. Just sign the papers and end this. He's made it clear he's going to get married again. No judge worth their position is going to stand in the way of that. Your marriage is over. Your children have grown up and you have no more common assets. It's all over. Sign the papers and move on. He took the papers out of the folder and placed them in front of her, offering her a pen. Rebecca met my gaze, and at that moment she began to cry. I knew her well enough to know that she was genuinely upset. Rubbing her cheeks, she took the offered pen with a trembling hand and glanced at the documents. At the bottom, she signed and dated the papers. Is my presence necessary in court? I asked my lawyer. No, Daniel, you can go. You will receive the divorce order in the mail. Great, then we're done here. I got up, and Sarah took my hand as I helped her out of the room. I'm sorry, Daniel, I heard Rebecca cry. I will always love you. I appreciated the apology, even though it meant nothing more to me. It was too little, too late. As for those last 3 words, I'm sure she still loved me, but I didn't care. The woman I loved was currently holding my hand, and in a month and a few days, she would become my bride. Walking outside and down the street, my dad, Linda, Michael, and Emma were waiting for us at a nearby Starbucks. With a gesture of my head, I indicated that we were moving to the nearest sports bar, as I wanted a drink. After purchasing a round of drinks, we sat down at the table, and I recounted the conversation. They smiled as Michael admitted that I had probably said everything he wanted to say. "How did she look?" Emma asked. "Like hell," I said. "Definitely looked older than her age. Definitely worth the upgrade," Sarah whispered in my ear. "Did she sign the papers?" I nodded. We clinked glasses and drank. "I went through the same thing with your mother," Dad said to Michael. "I'm sure everything Rebecca told you is what she was trying to tell me." "Was she trying to blame me?" Michael asked. "Yeah, the old 'it was just physical' line. What the hell is with these women who claim it was just physical?" Emma wondered almost to herself. "I married my husband, and I wouldn't dream of cheating on him just for physical reasons. If I want intimacy, I'll go to my husband and make sure he satisfies me when I need it." She stopped and blushed, realizing she had just said that in front of her father and grandfather. We looked at each other and burst out laughing. "Well said, girl, well said," exclaimed my father. "Words to live by. Every time I feel that way, your grandfather doesn't stand a chance," Linda stated. "And if he needs a little help, he knows there are options available." "Linda, this is my grandfather," Emma exclaimed. "He's not dead and neither am I. I'm 65 years old and still quite capable of good intimacy," Linda retorted. "Your grandfather met me at the right age. He was still passionate and I was almost constantly interested. But as soon as we met, we made a promise to each other to treat each other well. We both experienced failed marriages due to cheating. I'm just glad it's almost over," I admitted. "I don't like that I'm just another divorce statistic, but as I said in the room, cheating is unforgivable. Honestly, those who decide to deal with this by staying have nothing but my sympathy. Maybe if your children were 10 years younger, I would have felt trapped, but then I looked at my father. It was difficult, but he always had my support." We stayed in Dallas for a couple more days while I talked to my family about their plans. Emma and Tom immediately agreed to come to Denver. Michael was still evaluating his options but would likely join us. To my surprise, my sister suggested that she too might come with us. Having dinner with her when she arrived alone, I learned that her marriage was also over. "You can stay with us until you figure this out," Sarah offered. "Any family member is welcome. You're my family now, and my family is yours now too. I'm selling my house here in Richardson, and we'll make a lot of money from it," I added. "House prices in Denver are much more reasonable than here. Sarah and I are looking at buying a bigger house in Golden with rooms for everyone, and eventually for the children we're planning to have." "How many children do you want, Daniel?" she asked. "As many as you want, Sarah. I love being a dad." A month later, I received the divorce order in the mail, which stated that my marriage to Rebecca Daniels was officially dissolved. Since she did not keep my family name, I never heard from her again. But through the grapevine, I learned that she left Dallas 6 months after our divorce was finalized. From what Michael told me, as he was the only one still occasionally speaking to her, she headed north to Minnesota to start over. After that, I stopped asking, and Michael stopped telling me because I no longer cared what she did. 2 days after receiving the divorce order, I proposed to Sarah on a hiking trail in the Rocky Mountain National Park, with our families watching from a scenic overlook. She could barely speak and nodded as I placed the engagement ring on her finger. 6 months later, we got married on the same trail, with a reception afterward at a beautiful venue in Estes Park. As I slipped the ring onto Sarah's finger, surrounded by the Colorado mountains and the family who supported us, I realized that sometimes the worst betrayals can lead to the most beautiful new beginnings. Rebecca had unknowingly set me free to find my true soulmate. Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.